You take one step into this thing and you go, holy shit, this is just a absolute dumpster fire. This is a shit storm inside of a dumpster fire. And then you don't want anything to do with it because it's so disgusting. And this is all you see is this ridiculousness when you look in here. And so we have to have some kind of collective repellent mechanism to say, we got to stop giving this stuff so much attention. And I understand that's kind of hard to do when the leaders of the fucking free world are trying to pick us off. And then the president of Argentina goes, well, shit, if Trump did it, I should probably go get a little bit too. And then the no jumper guy with the porn star watch, like, well, let me get a little bit too. Like, it's like, what are we, like, we got to do something here. We have got to do something.
Today's episode is brought to you by Babylon Labs and their vision to build a Bitcoin-secure, decentralized world. They're pioneering the future with the world's first trustless and self-custodial Bitcoin staking protocol, allowing Bitcoin holders to stake BTC on POS chains, L2s, and DA layers without relying on third-party custody, bridges, or wrapped assets. Learn more at babylonlabs.io. Welcome, everybody, into another episode of Coinage. I'm your host, Zach Guzman, coming to you live from our Brooklyn studios here in New York City as Memecoins continue to be the talk of the town following the huge scandal in Argentina as President Milei continues to deal with the fallout after he endorsed the Libra token and blew open a huge conversation about front-running, insider trading, all kinds of things in the crypto space. Today, we're chatting what it all means, what the impacts are, and how we got here with friend of the show, Travis Kling, on Coinage today, Ikigai Asset Management founder. And Travis, I always love chatting with you because you somewhat predicted a lot of this. I think we were just chatting before we started here a year ago, almost to the day, with your blog post. I just want to bring it up because it was great then as it's great now. But maybe just to you, your first reaction about where we are now and how you kind of saw a lot of this crypto nihilism coming.
Yeah, we are, I guess, now speed running a post-Gensler SEC regulation-free / regulation light. I don't know. People have been calling it it's crime season. People have been calling it that since Trump launched his Memecoin. We're now in crime season. If the sitting president of the United States is doing this, then apparently anybody can do this. And Iggy Azalea crawled so Donald J. Trump could walk. Apparently. And now we're right in the middle of this. And it's some kind of like Mad Max dystopian hellscape thing. It's super disappointing. It's like a tremendous waste of time. It's like the most nihilistic, the most hyper gambling, the most worthless, the most pointless, the most extractive, unbelievably extractive, all bad, no good. And we're just going to see, is it that we have to push that far to that level of ridiculousness in order to get the ecosystem to collectively say enough is enough and have all of this, swing back in some other direction? Or is this, something more directionally structural, like, crypto, has a serious problem because we can't figure out any use cases, still have a use case problem, a core utility problem. And it's this thing that's come to fill the gap, and it's going to continue being like that because we're not going to be able to solve the core utility issue.
Yeah, I guess, again, I think it's taken almost having a face of it to kind of get people to face. Let me rephrase that because that doesn't sound right. It takes having a face of the kind of bad side of meme coins like we got this week with Hayden Davis and what he launched with President Milei in that whole controversy, I think, to ask these questions. And I just want to play, I think, a little bit of kind of where at least we just put together a whole episode on this, kind of walking through why the Milei controversy is so huge, not just for that country and President Milei, who is now facing, let's be clear, potential fraud charges and an impeachment inquiry potentially, but also for crypto, which is what we're talking today, because the CoffeeZilla interview that everyone's kind of watched, I assume by now, and looked at and saw, if you haven't somehow. I just want to play a little bit of the piece of where Hayden's talking about how all of these things are insider games, because I think it really does force the industry to say, look, all right, where do we go from here? And how bad is this when you have the guy who just did Libra also admitting to doing Melania and what that means? So let's just play this clip, Travis, and then get your take on the other side. Take a listen.
It is an insider's game. This is an unregulated casino. Like, if you're a retail trader thinking you're going to go make millions off of meme coins, you better study your fucking ass off. All of these are a game. And so from a retail perspective, I highly encourage people, unless they have, like, if you have 100 grand, go spend 10 and play the game if you want to do that. But it's not a good idea.
Now, for me, the most frustrating thing is you have a guy admitting there that it's not a good idea, but also has launched 2 of these things that have hurt a lot of people. And it's frustrating for me because as a founder who's tried to basically more efficiently create something that is community owned and raise without using meme coins, it's just a very efficient thing. And you come from the TradFi world too. The idea of like using market makers to kind of launch this token and swap out, now he's stuck with $100 million, not entirely sure what to do with it, and you have a lot of people who are pissed. That's just not efficient. And so I'm just kind of curious to get your reaction to everything that's played out. I'm sure you saw all the details.
Yeah, actually, I saw the clips from the CoffeeZilla. I actually couldn't bring myself to spend the time to watch the entire episode. It's just this shit's just been, it's been a little overwhelming, to be honest. I don't know if overwhelming is the right word. It's just been it's just a bit much, you know. I guess I don't know. I've been doing this for a while. I've been in this thing for a while at a relatively high level. So it's like the fact that I didn't know who this Hayden guy was, but I knew that types of guys like this existed. Mm-hmm. This was something that's sort of like well understood by people that are, you know, I think active in this space and have been active in this space for a while. Maybe putting a face and a voice to it has helped to magnify and sort of pinpoint people's outrage towards this kind of thing, or just maybe it's highlighted like how far we have devolved into I think it's like it's the lack of pretense that we have now drawn out to the point where these things are lasting. How long did Libra last? Minutes, right?
Maybe.
Did it last an hour?
Yeah, well, it depends on how you want to track it, because it's maybe like 5 hours in terms of like from launch to like shit hitting the fan.
Right? Yeah, so it's like when I got into this, it's like ICP, like the ticker ICP, like that was like the con of like 2018, you know, but that's like a 4-year con that I can't remember what that guy's name was that ran that thing, right? But that's like a 4-year con, right? And like Charles Hoskinson, right? This guy's been running like this is like a 6-year con that this guy's doing, and we have now distilled the con down into the president of Argentina is running a 5-hour con on the crypto ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And people lost a lot of money on ICP. People lose a lot of money on Cardano. But there was some sort of fake thing that we were pretending to do with those projects, and not to pick on them, there's like 1,000 other ones just like them, right? But now it's like we're distilling all of this down into just like completely nihilistic, and people are lining up around the corner to get a piece.
I think that's interesting. I think that's interesting, though, because, well, I guess it depends on what you mean by that, because I think, and Milei said this in his interview, he's like, look, these aren't real people. There's 40,000 transactions or so are really probably only like 5,000 people. A lot of them are bots. And it was interesting to hear him say that in an interview because you don't hear people in crypto talking about that too much. Obviously, of course, he might need to bring that up when he's talking about, hey, look, I didn't hurt real people here. But I think he's right in terms of a lot of these launches do seem like a lot of wash trading to get people excited, and then you pull the rug, and that's where it comes from. And you're right, you speed run it. And that's my main question for you, Travis, and we can talk about how we got here and why we got here as a space in terms of having the unregulated casino be the thing that helped number go up for the underlying L1s. But I do think it is a fair question to ask if you bring up kind of a chart, and it looks like this, as you're saying. Does it matter if it's 5 hours or 5 years? If it like is built on the premise of raise a bunch of money on a token and eventually bleed that token out over time, whether it's 5 years or 5 hours, it doesn't really matter, I guess, is the main thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what I mean in referring to a speed run, and like the question of whether or not this is some sort of like crescendo moment, apex moment of the fakeness of crypto, that we have started out with running like multi-year schemes and then scams, and we've now fast forwarded all the way to like you've got, you're doing a grift bang. A guy came up with this term a couple days ago, made that one up, a grift bang. So you got guys lined up around the corner for the grift bang in crypto, and it's like this cast of characters is just like it's Trump, and it's what's his name, Dave Portnoy, and it's like Javier Milei, and it's Iggy Azalea, and it's
well, Caitlyn Jenner got in on it. Let's not forget that one too.
Caitlyn Jenner's in this. It's just like the cast of characters on this deal is unbelievable, and I think it is okay, like how did we get here?
Well, I want to talk about how we got here, because I think that is a very interesting piece too, right? Because, yeah, you've got long cons, you got short cons. I don't know how I feel about the term grift bang necessarily, because that sounds like, I don't know, it could be taken a lot of different ways, but I do think
sounds like exactly what it is. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, fair point. But I think that we can talk about how we got here, just because if you think about backing up, and you were making this point before we started, think about backing up to 2022 and maybe even before that in 21, right? It's like, okay, you had a big NFT boom bust, right? What did that show? Like, okay, maybe there's some games to be played in terms of activity on chain. And if you think about all of this boiling down to that, needing to show activity on chain, you're gonna have to keep having a new thing that drives people to do something on chain. And so you had NFTs, then they became meme coins. Then those meme coins went from Ethereum to Solana. And now we're here. And it's like, well, now that's happening in terms of the people are turning on it. And so what does that mean? I think for Solana is a question, which we can get into in a second. But first, maybe just your idea in terms of, what we saw in 22 and why we're here now.
Yeah, I agree with you. We got to the aftermath of all the damage that was done in 2022, not just FTX, but Celsius and BlockFi and 3AC and all the stuff. And then it's like you wake up at the beginning of 2023 and you're like, hey, what's left here is an ecosystem, Bitcoin excluded. I think Bitcoin's off doing its own thing. It's as separate from all of this mess as it ever has been, I think. But outside of Bitcoin, crypto, what do we have? And to your point, I think the Solana community was just looking for ways to stay together and do something. And meme coin trading was that thing to just do when there wasn't anything else to do. And there were examples from Doge and Shiba Inu of people in the prior cycle that had made a lot of money doing this. And you had these big market caps, I think, hanging out there for Doge and for Shiba Inu that acted as, sort of some kind of goal for this. And then in 2023, you had the rise of Bonk, and you had Whiff and Pepe, and what else was in that 23 class? I think those are the three that come to mind.
Yeah, and Harry Potter, Sana, Obama, Inu, or whatever that one was. Yeah,
there you go. That one too. Right.
Good vintage.
And and all of this was just the crypto ecosystem looking around and going, well, none of this shit does anything. We can't get excited about the tech, about the actual use cases. There's little pockets of stuff you can kind of get excited about and be hopeful for. DPIN, for example. But we're just going to focus on the meme coins. And you fast forward the next year into 2024, and you had the BTC ETFs as the big headline thing, and then you continued now. So now it's like, okay, now Bitcoin's in this bull market that's driven by structural inflows that now have access to Bitcoin safely through these ETFs for the first time ever. You've got this big cover fire support from the ecosystem's largest asset that's getting all of these inflows in. Mm-hmm. You've got that. And so now crypto is like, well, gosh, Bitcoin's running. Like, what are we going to do? And the ecosystem still has this core utility problem where it's not producing solutions to real problems. Yeah. It's not giving use cases that are driving mainstream adoption and getting significant traction. It's just not happening. And so the ecosystem just ends up, and then it's like because it's been like this now we've now been kind of in this malaise for over 2 years now. We've been in this malaise. And now because of that, now it's like the only new people that crypto is attracting is it's just degenerate gamblers. Like the only people we're pulling guys, the capital. You mentioned
some of them. You threw Dave Portnoy into that mix too.
Yeah, the capital that crypto is now competing for is 5-leg parlay capital. I'm a random Zoomer that is getting his ass handed to him by the economic state of the United States. I can't get ahead, financial nihilism, blah, 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 blah. I'm doing 5-leg parlays every weekend. Do I peel off $100 from this 5-leg parlay, and do I want to go play in the meme coins? That is the type of new entrants that this ecosystem has now been attracting for the last 2 years.
Well, let me push back on that too, just because I think I agree with you in terms of definitely on the retail side for sure. But what we had been hearing, and this is where it gets very interesting, because I almost feel like the same thing that happened to Ethereum when their big moment came is kind of going to happen to Solana when their big moment was supposed to come too, which is you had the ETH ETF getting approved, where it was supposed to appeal to institutional investors, and they had this huge kind of like surge of transaction fees, and everything's going great to show for it off of NFTs and off of ERC20s, and then all of a sudden, all that shifts to Solana, and now Ethereum's sitting there saying, well, shit, and we did all this kind of, L2 road mapping to kind of have this all work out, but now we got nothing to show for it. Then you got Solana come along, and you got institutional investors very excited about all the on-chain activity coming on in Solana, and then you got the Memecoin rug pull out from under Solana now, right when all these institutional investors were begging for the Solana ETF to get approved, and you got the SEC probably going to greenlight it. Worst possible timing, I would say.
I know, I agree with that. Yeah.
So my pushback there is just that, like, it seemed like there was some maybe not 5-leg parlay investor capital very excited about Solana. Now at the worst possible time, all this kind of happened.
Well, the pitch to institutional investors for Solana was to own the casino. That's what everybody said, right? You want to own the casino, and Solana is the casino, and there's your pitch. And I think that resonated. May still resonate with folks. I think that the what's happened since the launch of the Trump meme coin, which amazingly, that was only a month ago. That Trump launched his meme coin. And I think there has been so much damage done to like the meme coin landscape and the thesis and like what this means for crypto. And then in turn, what this means for Solana, because you want to like own the casino. Well, it's like, do you really want to own the casino? Look at what's going on. I don't know. They may fucking impeach Javier and Milei off of this shit. It's like, do you really want to own it? Or maybe is it kind of like not something that you really want to own? And people were just like trying to pitch institutional owners to like own the casino because they're bag holders and they need somebody to buy the bags off of them to make number go up, right? And I think we're right in the midst of that right now. About that's not the only thing happening on Solana. I'm not trying to like. I don't know. That's not the only thing happening on Solana. The large majority of DPIN is happening on Solana. And DPIN is interesting. And you're getting some traction. You're getting some growth and actually solving real world problems. But it's like, check the charts on any DPIN token. Tough. It's tough because they got token.
It has been tough. You're right.
Yeah.
And I guess that's my main point too. And we can talk about Milei and kind of how we arrived here from a regulatory perspective too. But I would echo the same thing that you said there in terms of like, look, everyone's free to smoke. You can smoke cigarettes. It doesn't mean you need to invest in a lot of the tobacco companies if you don't want to give people cancer. It's a question of what do you want to do and what do you want to support, right? And I guess that's kind of what you're asking, where it's like, do you want to be the meme coin? Do you want to do that to people? And I guess I'm conflicted, to be honest with you, Travis, because in one side of me, I say, no, I don't want that, because that's why we set up Coinage as a co-op. That's why we set up Coinage to build for the long term and have the sustainability aspect of we're trying to grow something real and people can own a piece. And it's not kind of optimizing for instant liquidity so you can flip a token and kind of walk away with a 5x in, as you said, 3 hours and call it a day. It's if you want to join us and build with us, by all means, go ahead, and we're happy to have you. But the question, if you take a libertarian lens and kind of the lens that crypto's had for the last 2 years of calling for Gensler to basically leave forever, is that you open the floodgates to let anyone do anything, and you remove the idea of needing a nanny state to police any of this. And maybe that's not entirely fair, because I think there are probably some moderates in crypto who say we need some rules and regulations. We don't want a free-for-all. But we are getting a free-for-all now. So what do you think is the real answer to solving that? Because you're right, it might get Milei impeached. I don't know.
Yeah, I think we need to do a better job of self-regulation. You can have regulatory agency regulations, and we need help there. And I think we're getting help there. I mean, that's not to, I don't want to harp on negative stuff all the time. I think the press conference that we had from David Sachs and whoever the other guys were standing up there with him in support of crypto and the crypto executive order, the establishment of the working group list, the roadmap that they're laying out, what's going to go through Congress as well too, to get a market structure bill, get a stablecoin bill. It was all very positive. Over any medium, longer term period of time for crypto, that's very positive. That does not strike me as the avenue by which we're going to prevent this meme coin stuff that's been happening from happening, because it's happening on DEXs. And, I don't know. I'm not a securities lawyer. I'm not entirely, I don't know. Was Libra a security? I mean, in the United States, was that a security? Is Trump token a security? I don't think so. I don't know if you have a view on that.
I think a lot of wise lawyers have been coming out and making the point that, like, look, things don't need to be securities for you to run into insider trading issues. And we saw that kind of with NFTs, even around what happened with OpenSea's Nate Chastain, who served his time. He went to jail, and like it served some sort of like, hey, this is something. It doesn't even need to be a security for that to happen. And then when you think about like the court of public opinion, it's just kind of like, I'm super conflicted about Milei right now, because it's like you have a bunch of Argentinians who are super pissed about that. But it's like, if you take the position that, like, look, and even his answer around, like, I didn't promote this thing, I shared it, is kind of true. It's like, no one's forcing you to buy these things. And so when you have someone come out, and a lot of the people who are quote unquote victims saying that, hey, this thing rugged me, it's like, no one made you buy it. So he is technically telling the truth, where it's like, I just posted this thing. Now, are you an idiot because you posted something that, like, this is the team? Then yeah, you might be an idiot. But at the same time, Bitcoin and crypto is here because we don't favor bailouts. So, like, do I really want this dude, who definitely launched a bad project and was run and launched poorly, to take $100 million and give him back to the Dave Portnoys of the world, rather than maybe put that into Argentine businesses? No, I don't think that's a good solution. So I don't know what you say to that either. But these are hard questions.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad we're talking about them. And you bring up a good point. And I'm libertarian minded. It's not in my nature to sit there and be like, oh, government, like, come regulate me. That's not how I feel about these things. And I think that's what I mean about, we need better self-regulatory practices. Like, self-regulation in crypto, this is a social construct. It's a social construct because this thing just exists on Twitter and on podcasts like this and in Telegram groups and at conferences. That is the mesh, the social fiber that makes up the crypto asset ecosystem. It's global, it's 24/7, it's cross-jurisdictional, it's cross-national, and we need to, I think, just collectively decide that like we're just not going to participate in this kind of thing anymore. And I think that may be what makes like this exact moment so interesting, is that the grift bang has been so egregious that you can actually in this moment sort of feel that maybe we're collectively getting to the point that we're going to be like, we're not going to fucking do this anymore. We're just not going to do it anymore. And I saw that the like Adam, what's that guy's name? No Jumper, the No Jumper podcast guy. He's got like total piece of shit. He like poured his wife out to do porn or whatever. And like he went and launched a meme coin and he rugged his deal in like 5 minutes. And it's like, you know, people lost like $275,000 or something like that. And I'm like, that's a good number. I like that number. That it's like, that's what this guy could get out of his grift in this moment in the crypto asset ecosystem.
That it's way lower is what you're saying. That it's lower than it was before.
Right, exactly. That it's gotten to that low. And it's like, this is just a social decision that we can collectively decide to make. The reason that you have to have some amount of collective social pushback against this is because it takes up so much attention.
Yeah.
It takes up a lot of people's eyeballs on the space as a whole. And it's like, let's say you're Joe Smith, the random traditional TradFi allocator dude. Let's say you're on the investment committee of some pension that manages billions of dollars, and you guys are thinking about, let's say you got a 0.5% position in the Bitcoin ETFs, and you're like thinking about getting, you know, another 0.5% of, you know, maybe some ETH ETF, or if the Solana ETF is coming, maybe you can do some of that or whatever. And it's like, oh, let's go check in and see how things are going in the crypto asset community. How are things going in the crypto asset community? And it's like you take one step into this thing and you go, holy shit. This is just a absolute dumpster fire. This is a shit storm inside of a dumpster fire. And then you don't want anything to do with it because it's so disgusting. And this is all you see is this ridiculousness when you look in here. And so we have to have some kind of collective repellent mechanism to say, we got to stop giving this stuff so much attention. And I understand that's kind of hard to do when the leaders of the fucking free world are trying to pick us off. And then the president of Argentina goes, well, shit, if Trump did it, I should probably go get a little bit too. And then the no jumper guy with the porn star watch, like, well, let me get a little bit too. Like, it's like, what are we, like, we got to do something here. We have got to do something.
Well, I think everyone collectively is asking that question right now. And I think, honestly, like, I don't want to shill what we're doing here, Travis. I don't. And you know I don't want to do it. But it's like, I just explain how I arrived here in the only way I can think possible, because you're right. It's not just the Mileis of the world or the Trumps of the world or anyone with a social platform. And I think glad that everyone has woken up to, hey, you know what? Maybe it's good people don't choose to go down the path of maybe I should try and, you know, sell whatever, you know, good branding I have on my name to just kind of dump that right now and take the equity hit, because people are making those decisions in real time. So I give a lot of credit to people who have a lot of followers and have not launched these things. But the question is, even from a media lens, is like, it's tricky to not cover those things because it clicks well and there's a lot of attention on it, and chart go up, number go up. It's like a lot of outlets make the mistake of saying like, oh, Trump's or Milei's meme coin was $4 billion. It was like, it was never $4 billion. It never got there. It's not really that high. These tokens are sitting there. They control 80% of the thing. So it's like, it's not really 4 billion. And so that number draws in more eyeballs and gets more people hurt. And so it's like, from an editorial lens, it's really hard because I get journalists who are trying to just cover this stuff, but it's like, now you've got influencers who are also making money off this, so they cover it a lot more. So all these incentives are warped, and that's why you get so much attention collectively thrown at these things. And we started Coinage because we don't want to go that route. So how do you not go that route? You need to figure out different ways to monetize. You need to create a community wrapper around an outlet that builds a platform that tries to highlight the good in crypto. And that's where Coinage came from. And it's the only way to align incentives to prevent either A, getting paid to promote shit, or B, talking about shit that's going to hurt a lot of people. And that's the only way I can think rationally, like, fix the problem. We've been working on it for 2 years, and now I'm excited because it seems like with this shit happening now, we're turning a corner. $7,000 coming in between our mints just this past week, best week we've ever had. And so I think people are waking up to the kind of real use cases. And you talk about DPIN. I'm not saying media is going to be the end all be all, by the way, because I think there's way cooler shit happening in the AI space. But as far as like the space is concerned, we really need good projects to point to that are easy to understand examples to be like, hey, that's a good thing. Because otherwise, how else do you point out what's good and bad if you don't have a good example? Is my take.
It is. What is going on with meme coins is intimately connected to the core utility problem of alts in general. If you had numerous alt projects to point to say, look at this thing that's getting very significant real world traction, solving a real world problem, an actual use case that is just something cool in the world that people are really using because they want to use it because it's that good. And there is just really such a dearth of projects to point to. It's not a zero, but the list is quite short. And like you said, you got a news cycle. Everybody's got a news cycle that they got to deal with. And it's like, it's not like I'm expecting Javier Milei launching a meme coin to not be part of the news cycle. That's not, I think it's just more about trying to have this ecosystem and the tens of billions of dollars of venture capital that have been raised over the last few years and deployed into all manner, just to have something that we can show for that, that's actually making an impact in the world. And then you can talk about those things instead of the nihilistic meaninglessness of meme coins. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk to you about the nihilistic meaning because, as I said off the top, you called this basically a year ago to the day. And you personally, we've had many chats about you personally in this game, why you're still in it, why we choose to dedicate so much of our time to this space, despite the fact that it has hurt both you and me personally. I have the scars to show for it. But I think, the question there is, Travis, I mean, if you look back on kind of what you posted in February 2nd, I'm looking at it, February 2nd of 24, and think about the FTX collapse, everything you went through personally, everything kind of in those moments for me back in Terra where it's like, well, shit, there goes all this money. You're sitting there and it's a physically painful moment for people to be in. And yet there are still so many of us who are here because we still believe in it. And it's something that is rationally really hard to square, I'm sure, when people ask you. But, I mean, you're still here, I'm still here. Why?
Yeah, I mean, I still believe in the potential of decentralization. I think that it would be a harder question to answer if we had gotten a Harris administration and that we were dealing with potentially 4 more years of Gensler and Operation Choke Point 2.0 and that sort of thing. But we did get a totally new hand of cards with this Trump administration. And it's a crazy juxtaposition that crypto feels so shitty right now while also having the level of support that we have at the absolute highest levels of the US government. It's a strange juxtaposition, actually, that things could feel so off the rails and so misguided and, a ship lost at sea, the way crypto feels right now, nihilistic, pointless. What are we doing here? It's weird that it feels that much like that when we're less than 1 month into this Trump administration where we got this crypto executive order. The guy signed it 48 hours after he took office or something. We get one of that. We get David Sachs. David Sachs is the crypto and AI czar. We get him to do a press conference about crypto before he does a press conference about AI. Do you know how crazy that is? You know how crazy? He did a press conference about all of us fucking jokers us were jokers before he did a press conference about this technology that has a very real chance to be the most transformative technology in human history. That's not even an exaggeration. This thing is going to end the concept of work as we know it. And he did a press conference for us before that. That's insane. That's crazy that happened.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And yet we're sitting, and so I think that part of this is just like, I don't know. Like I said, maybe this is the crescendo, and maybe we do undoubtedly have a new hand of cards as crypto, and we're going to fast forward 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and you're going to get more regulation in place, and it's going to allow new entrants to come into the space that were scared, unwilling to enter the space when the regulatory uncertainty was so high for years. And so you can really fast forward. You're going to get token structures. They're going to be able to have more equity-like features, more security types of features that are going to, certainly have the potential to just kind of change the utility thesis around alts broadly. And so, I'm hopeful for that. Undoubtedly, I'm hopeful for that. And I think that's one of the big reasons why I stay around. Yeah.
Well, that's the reason why I quit, to be honest with you. And you knew this back in my Yahoo days when we were doing shows back there. Like, it was a great job. Loved it over there. Loved talking to smart people every day. It was a dream job. And quit the dream job because I, too, believe in kind of the idea of decentralization changing all these sectors. And I think that's maybe why you had David Sachs talking about crypto before AI, is because it's very clear. You talk about this a lot. I've been watching your tweets about kind of the idea of Sam Altman and what happens if AI is fully controlled by just like one or two people, and how scary that is. And the only solution is kind of like what crypto is pioneering right now. And so, like, I want to believe too, because otherwise you're caught in the same nihilism of, well, we're screwed anyways, and AI is gonna like own us, so there's no solution here. And so it's like the only other option. And so I would echo your optimism, and perhaps it's a kind of a good thing for us to end with our last kind of like 10 minutes here. It's just like the idea of that, to me, is also similarly why we built the way we did, because, there aren't a lot of projects offering legit ownership over anything. And I think that, to your point, is because, if you take VC money, you can't really kind of like do that. With where we started, it was very much the opposite in terms of launching this and let people go and opening up that access. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people have been raising off tokens that kind of recreate the same problems with VCs. It's like, okay, you're giving early insiders access that they can dump. If you don't have a healthy lockup, you're seeing what's happening in Memecoins. And so, I don't know. I'm optimistic that a lot of this will get right. And to me, it seems like, and I'd be curious if you agree, everything you talked about in nihilism last year is like, it feels like this is the moment where it's a dying last breath of like all the shitty in crypto. To use your words, all the last grift bangs are dying, and that feels good.
I hope you're right. It's a fight worth fighting, for sure. It's a fight worth fighting. And I mean, we haven't talked about Bitcoin at all, really, in this conversation. I think it is just important to remember that you have this other thing hanging out there that's the biggest thing, that is like so separate from all of that. Thank God. And
I think it's definitely made a lot of more people like Bitcoin maximalists, like even me. It's just like, okay, there's clearly this, and then there's everything else, and it's like shift and force that. But again,
we did this in 2019. I don't know. I know because you and I were doing interviews in 2019, so you're spending some amount of time. But I know you were looking at other just fintech stuff in general. 2019 was like a big, like, come to Jesus year for alts and like alt use cases and token structures. Bitcoin maxis, increased their ranks a lot in 2019. And in some ways, we're definitely going through that right now. It's just that in 2019, the aggregate market cap of alts was like it was like 80 billion or something like that in aggregate for all alts. And now it's like $1.5 trillion. So it's like, the size of this thing that people have like all these question marks about, it's enormous, right? And back then you had done like a couple $100 million in aggregate ever of VC funding into crypto ever in aggregate, and now that number is like, it's like 40 billion or something now, right?
Yeah.
And so it just, in 2019, you could really make a credible case that we were still quite early. You were going through the aftermath. It was like the mania of 17, and then the kind of collapse of 18, and then 19 was the aftermath of like, okay, that was actually a mania, and it all collapsed because it was unsustainable. And now what do we have to show for ourselves? We don't have all that much to show for ourselves, as it turns out. Okay, let's go work on building some things that are actually interesting, right? And like it's like, it's super disappointing that that's 5 years ago. And then now we fast forward to today. And when you sort of like ask those same type of questions, like it's like nobody would ever love the answer that you get when you ask those questions. And nobody in their wildest dreams. I think about this often. If you went back to 2019 and you told me all this shit is going to be worth $1.5 trillion, not excluding Bitcoin, all the alts are going to be worth $1.5 trillion. And now start describing what's going on in the alt ecosystem. Wow. Do you know how bad I would miss? Do you know how bad I would overshoot what is actually going on here? And that's just a strange thing. And it's disappointing.
That's true. That's true, but to use the meme coin example too, I think maybe there is some of the same shenanigans in terms of like, okay, how many of those tokens are locked and what does that look like? How much are early investors just sitting on them because there's not that liquidity there? It could be a lot of that too. That whole number could be pretty inflated. But I want to push that a little bit further because, if you take a look at the ETH chart too, Travis, it's kind of like there is a thesis to be made, and I think I've been making it, and perhaps, again, who knows? Is it the bags talking or is it logic talking? Coinage has a lot of ETH because we're an ETH project, and so there it is in the treasury. And when you look at the chart, if you go back to 2018 and think about that and kind of where we were then, at around, what is that? I think that would have been in 2018, $1,300. And where we are now, charts still go up and to the right. And if you think about what's been proven out, stable coins, etc., sure, they can live on any chain, and sure, they are living on any chain. But I wonder if you look at all this opportunity here as maybe ETH's moment to also say we are different than everything else, particularly as kind of Solana has this moment in time. And I'd be curious, because you are a very smart investor, is there a case to be made that this is kind of ETH's final catch-up moment?
I mean, I think that entire ecosystem seems, I won't pretend to be like intimately involved in Ethereum's ecosystem because that's just not true. So I think I just sort of see it from an informed distance, basically. But it seems like it's really just kind of going through a, what are we really doing here kind of moment. And I think that that's true technically, but it's also sort of true spiritually, I guess is maybe the right, like it's like just like what does the project represent basically, because they went after the ultrasound money, right? They went after the ultrasound money deal, and now that narrative is like completely fallen apart, right? And then they're not the fastest, and they're not the cheapest, and they're not the easiest user experience, and Solana has won that. And so now they're kind of like somewhere in here where there was at the peak of ETH mania, there were very real discussions that people were having about ETH competing with Bitcoin. And think about how far away ETH is now from that. Think about how far ETH is away from having some sort of credible discussion about competing against Bitcoin. But then at the same time, it's like people are saying, well, Solana's faster, cheaper, and easier to use, and the community seems more built in at this point. What is the use cases that people are getting excited about? So I think there's sort of like the spiritual question around the ETH ecosystem right now, and I won't pretend to have the answers for it, but
I don't think anybody does, and I think that's the thing. Is like I don't necessarily have the answers for it either, but I do think it is interesting to think about how some of this shakes out in terms of, to your point, using ultrasound money, just pulling up the chart and just kind of looking at some things that they always like flexing, which is the inflation rates over here. If you take a look at those taxes here, just seeing ETH technically being less inflationary than Bitcoin at its current state, and kind of some of these things that they've changed around, and whether or not you do have we were just down in El Salvador talking to Tether, talking to Paolo. talking about what they're trying to do, talking to Bitfinex, what they're trying to do. If you do think about the idea of securitizing or tokenizing, I should say, a lot of these things, you do all of a sudden have some major funds coming in. And so as much as I think you and I would agree, there is a lot of distraction and a lot of things that are grift bangs. But then you've got an increased, less talked about piece of TradFi people waking up to, okay, Trump did win, and this shit's not going to happen overnight, but it is February now. And you look at the rest of the year, and I'm sure, and maybe that's why we're still here, I'm sure that that is going to happen and continue. And then that's, I think, the off to the races moment in time that a lot of people have their hands crossed, fingers crossed for.
That's a good thing to end it on. That's right.
Yeah,
I don't want people to be super pessimistic about this. I'm just hoping to get people fired up enough to just have a collective, antibody type of response to this sort of thing. But yeah. Enjoy the conversation, Zach.
As always, man. As always, I want to thank you for coming on all these times. I want to thank you for retweeting it too, because to be honest with you, I think that this is what it's going to take. It's just like people shouting from the rooftops for good projects, and like you said, shouting down the remaining grift bangs of the world, and hope we see less of them. But as always, Travis Kling, the founder of Ikigai Asset Management. Thanks again for coming on, man. Appreciate it. Be well.
Thanks, Zach. Take care.
All right, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Coinage. As always, you can check out the biggest headlines in crypto and around the world of Web3 at coinage.media, and mint to co-own us as well. We're going to be heading to ETH Denver pretty soon, so we'll bring you the latest on the ground there to potentially some of these questions. Or perhaps you can jump into our Telegram using a Coinage NFT and answer them with us if you want to co-own the fastest growing Web3 media outlet in the space. For Travis, for myself, I'm Zach Guzman. We'll see you again soon.